Sammy Hagar just destroyed Alex Van Halen. Van Halen feud reaches breaking point. For years, Van Halen fans kept holding on to one last hope. Maybe someday, somehow, the surviving members of this legendary band would finally find peace. Maybe there'd be one final tribute. One final record. One final moment where the past could be put aside for the sake of the music. But now, that hope is hanging by a thread. Because Sammy Hagar has officially had enough. Recently, Alex Van Halen sparked a fresh wave of controversy after talking about the possibility of releasing unreleased material that he and Eddie Van Halen worked on before Eddie's passing. That alone got fans excited. After all, the idea of hearing one final Van Halen record is enough to stop rock fans in their tracks. But it wasn't just the music people focused on. It was Alex's attitude, especially when the conversation turned towards Sammy Hagar. And Sammy didn't stay quiet. In fact, he jumped right into the comment section on Feud's Instagram and made it crystal clear how he feels. Sammy wrote that the comments were exactly how both he and Michael Anthony felt, thanking fans for supporting the people trying to do the right thing. Then he added a sarcastic shot that made the tension impossible to ignore, basically questioning what Alex was thinking, or whether he was thinking at all. That one comment alone told fans everything. This wasn't some old disagreement fading with time. This was still raw, still personal, still very much alive. But then Sammy took it even further. In a brand new interview with Classic Rock magazine, he didn't just hint at bad blood. He slammed the door shut on any dream of ever working with Alex Van Halen again. And he used a comparison that said everything. Sammy said he understood exactly why David Gilmour would never want to play with Roger Waters again. Then he said that's exactly how he feels about Alex. That is not a small statement. That is Sammy Hagar openly comparing the Van Halen split to one of the most bitter feuds in classic rock history. And from the way he spoke, this wasn't frustration in the moment. This sounded final. Sammy described Alex as a deeply negative person and made it clear that, in his mind, there is no path back. No reunion. No peace summit. No final celebration of the band's history with both of them involved. For fans who were still hoping for one last Van Halen moment with surviving members on the same page, this was a brutal reality check. What makes this sting even more is that this feud has been simmering for decades. These two men reportedly haven't spoken in over 20 years. And instead of healing with time, the silence seems to have made everything worse. Every interview, every public comment, every missed opportunity has only added more resentment. A huge turning point came when Alex released his memoir, Brothers, in 2024. Fans expected a deeply personal reflection on Van Halen's story, and in many ways, that's what it was. But for Sammy Hagar, it was also a glaring reminder of where he stands with Alex. According to Sammy and many fans, the entire Van Hagar era was basically brushed aside. Despite the commercial success, the massive tours, and the hit records that defined that period, Alex reportedly gave that chapter almost no real weight in the book. For Sammy, that wasn't just disappointing. It was disrespectful. And honestly, that's where this gets really ugly. Because Sammy clearly believes Alex's anger comes from jealousy. In Sammy's view, he's the one still out there performing these songs, selling tickets, drawing crowds, and keeping the Van Halen catalog alive in front of audiences around the world. He's leading his best of all worlds shows, celebrating that music night after night, while Alex remains out of sight. Sammy even suggested that Alex is bitter because he can't do the same. He said Alex isn't a singer, isn't a guitar player, and isn't really a bandleader. He also questioned whether Alex even wants to play drums anymore, or if he still can. That is about as direct as it gets. From Sammy's point of view, he's doing the work of preserving the legacy while Alex sits on the sidelines criticizing it. He even argued that by performing those songs, he's helping sell Van Halen records and keeping the name relevant. In other words, Sammy feels he's honoring the music while Alex is just attacking the people still carrying it forward. But Alex has made his own position very clear too. When asked about participating in tribute-style shows with Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony, Alex's response was cold and simple: he wasn't interested. He reportedly felt those shows were not doing Van Halen justice. That tells you everything about how he sees this situation. To Alex, Van Halen was something very specific. And in his mind, once David Lee Roth left the first time, that original magic was gone. Whether fans agree or not, that appears to be how Alex sees the band's legacy. So now the divide is wider than ever. On one side, you have Sammy Hagar out in public, still celebrating the Van Halen years, still performing the songs, still embracing the era that made millions of fans fall in love with the band all over again. On the other side, you have Alex Van Halen guarding the past, protecting what he believes Van Halen truly was, and refusing to validate a version of the band he clearly never fully embraced. And now there's the final album issue. Alex has reportedly been focused on unfinished material involving Eddie Van Halen and Wolfgang Van Halen, which instantly got fans talking about what this project could become. But then came another twist. Reports suggested Alex had no interest in bringing back former Van Halen singers like Sammy Hagar or even David Lee Roth for the project. Instead, other legendary vocalists were mentioned as possibilities. That felt like one more insult piled onto the stack, especially for Sammy, who had already made it clear he felt shut out and disrespected. What makes this whole thing even sadder is the fact that before Eddie Van Halen passed away in 2020, he and Sammy reportedly found a way to reconnect. They texted. They made peace. They told each other how they felt before it was too late. Sammy has said that reconciliation meant everything to him. It gave him closure. It gave him peace with Eddie. But apparently, that peace never extended to Alex. And that may be the hardest part of this whole story. Because underneath all the sharp quotes, the sarcasm, and the bitterness, what fans are really watching is a legacy being split in half. Van Halen changed rock history. They were one of the biggest, loudest, most electrifying bands to ever do it. But now, even with Eddie gone, the wounds between the people left behind still haven't healed. At this point, a reunion feels impossible. A joint tribute feels dead. And any fantasy of Sammy Hagar and Alex Van Halen standing side by side again seems more distant than ever. So the question now is not whether they'll work it out. It's whether Van Halen's legacy can survive this kind of division without losing something essential in the process. Because right now, this isn't just a feud anymore. Sammy Hagar versus Alex Van Halen, the feud that won't end. But the deeper you look into this situation, the clearer it becomes that this feud was never just about one comment, or one interview, or even one book. It's about how two people remember the same band in completely different ways. For Sammy Hagar, the Van Halen years from 1985 to 1996 were one of the greatest chapters in rock history. When he joined the band after David Lee Roth left, many fans thought the group might collapse. Instead, the band exploded into a new era of success. Albums like 5150, OU 812, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, and Balance all debuted at number 1. The band sold out arenas worldwide, dominated MTV, and created some of the biggest rock hits of the late 80s and early 90s. Songs like Why Can't This Be Love, Dreams, Right Now, and When It's Love became staples of rock radio. For millions of fans, that era wasn't a replacement for the Roth years, it was simply another powerful version of Van Halen. And that's exactly why Sammy feels the history is being rewritten. In his view, ignoring that period isn't just disrespectful to him. It erases the work of everyone involved, especially Eddie Van Halen, who co-wrote those songs and helped shape that sound. Sammy has repeatedly argued that those albums were some of Eddie's most creative moments as a musician. So when the era gets reduced to a footnote, it hits a nerve. But Alex Van Halen clearly sees things differently. For Alex, Van Halen was always about the chemistry between himself, his brother Eddie, David Lee Roth, and Michael Anthony in those early explosive years. That lineup created the identity of the band, the wild energy, the humor, the party rock attitude that made Van Halen one of the most exciting acts of the late 1970s and early 1980s. From Alex's perspective, once Roth left in 1985, something fundamental changed. Even though the band continued to sell millions of records, Alex has suggested over the years that the spirit of the band was never quite the same. In interviews, he has hinted that the music became more polished, more radio-friendly, and less raw. Whether fans agree or not, that's clearly how he sees the band's legacy. And that difference in perspective has created a divide that might never close. Another major factor is Michael Anthony, the longtime Van Halen bassist who was eventually pushed out of the band in the mid-2000s. Anthony remained extremely close with Sammy Hagar, and the two have continued performing Van Halen material together for years. Their current Best of All Worlds tour celebrates the music from the Van Hagar era, performing those classic songs for fans who grew up with them. Reviews for the shows have been overwhelmingly positive. Many fans have praised the tour for honoring Eddie Van Halen's music while still delivering the high-energy rock performances the band was known for. But according to Alex, those shows don't represent the band properly. That criticism only fueled Sammy's frustration even more. From his standpoint, he's not trying to replace Van Halen, he's trying to celebrate it. He believes fans deserve to hear those songs live, especially now that Eddie is gone. And as long as people still want to hear them, he feels he has every right to keep performing them. Meanwhile, Alex Van Halen has taken a very different path. Instead of touring, he has focused on preserving his brother's legacy through archival projects, interviews, and his memoir Brothers. That book focused heavily on the relationship between Alex and Eddie, the childhood they shared, the musical journey they built together, and the bond that defined their lives. In many ways, the book wasn't really meant to be a full history of Van Halen. It was a story about two brothers. But because of that focus, large parts of the band's later history were barely mentioned. That left Sammy Hagar feeling like an entire decade of success had simply been brushed aside. And then came the final twist, the unreleased music. According to Alex, Eddie left behind a massive vault of unfinished recordings, guitar ideas, demos, and partially completed songs that the brothers had worked on over the years. For fans, the idea of hearing new Van Halen material after Eddie's death is incredibly exciting. But the big question is who would be involved. Would it feature Sammy Hagar? Would David Lee Roth return for one last recording? Or would Alex bring in an entirely different singer? So far, the answers haven't been encouraging for longtime fans hoping for unity. Reports suggest Alex has explored the possibility of outside vocalists rather than bringing back former band members. Names like Robert Plant and Paul Rodgers have been mentioned in discussions, though neither project has moved forward. That approach only reinforces the idea that Alex wants to move forward without revisiting the past relationships that defined the band. And that brings the story back to Eddie Van Halen himself. Because in many ways, Eddie was the one person who could still bridge the gap between everyone. Despite the conflicts over the years, Eddie had moments of reconciliation with several former bandmates. One of the most meaningful was his final communication with Sammy Hagar. Before Eddie passed away in 2020 after a long battle with cancer, he and Sammy reportedly exchanged messages and finally cleared the air. They told each other how much they appreciated the music they created together. For Sammy, that moment meant everything. It gave him closure. It allowed him to remember Eddie not as someone he fought with, but as a friend and musical partner who helped change his life forever. But sadly, that reconciliation never extended to Alex. And now, years later, the distance between them seems even greater. Van Halen's story is one of the most incredible in rock history. Two brothers from California who built a band that revolutionized guitar music and influenced generations of musicians. But like so many legendary bands, the story is also filled with conflict, ego, and relationships that were pushed to their breaking point. Today, the music remains timeless. The songs still fill stadiums. The albums still sell millions. And fans still celebrate the legacy of Eddie Van Halen as one of the greatest guitarists who ever lived. But the people behind that music are still divided. And as Sammy Hagar made painfully clear in his latest comments, the chances of those wounds ever healing may be smaller than ever. Because sometimes in rock history, even legends can't find their way back to each other. And before we come to the end of this video, I just want to take a moment to say a very big thank you to all of you for watching. Your time truly means a lot. In a world where there are thousands of videos you could be watching right now, the fact that you chose to spend a few minutes here with me on Hajararama TV is something I truly appreciate. This channel continues to grow because of viewers like you. Every view, every comment, and every bit of support helps this community become stronger. And that's what makes creating these videos so rewarding. If you enjoyed this video, please take a quick moment to like the video, leave a comment below, and share it with your friends or anyone who might enjoy this content. Your interaction really helps the channel reach more people who love stories, entertainment, and updates just like you do. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Hagar TV, and turn on the notification bell so you'll always be among the first to know when a new video is uploaded. There are many more exciting videos coming your way very soon, and I would love for you to be part of this journey as the channel continues to grow. I also enjoy hearing your thoughts, so feel free to drop your opinions, ideas, or suggestions in the comments section. Your voice matters here, and your feedback helps make Hagar TV even better. Once again, thank you so much for watching and for being part of this amazing community. Until next time, stay safe, stay informed, stay entertained, and keep watching Hagar TV.